The recipients for the Medal of Honor have shown unimaginable bravery in the face of the enemy, often disregarding their lives to save those of their fellow soldiers. Armand Edward Fisher was no exception. Fighting his way through Europe with the 45th Infantry Division, Fisher would lead the attack on a heavily fortified German position in southern France. During the resulting engagement, he would be responsible for destroying no less than 6 German machine gun positions. In today's video, we look at the Medal of Honor recipient Armand Edward Fisher and his bravery during World War II. If you enjoy this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button. It's free and really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. Born in New York on the 28th of January 1913, Armand Fisher would join the US Army at the age of 22 in 1935. Gaining considerable service as an enlisted man prior to the United States' involvement in the war, Fisher would serve in Italy in 1943. Now promoted to the rank of second lieutenant, he performed duties as a platoon leader in Easy Company of the 157th Infantry Battalion of the 45th Infantry Division. The 45th Division would be one of many to take part in the invasion of southern France in August 1944, under the codename Operation Dragoon. Unlike Operation Overlord, the invasion of northern France 2 months prior, German resistance after the landings in the south was considerably less taxing on the Allied soldiers. Much of this was to do with German resources being pushed elsewhere and the French resistance dealing harsh blows to the occupiers prior to the invasion. On the 12th of September 1944, Fisher and his men were part of a huge push through southern France towards the German border. On this particular day, Fisher and his men were moving past the small French town of Grammont. A nearby hill overlooked the low ground, and information was received that heavily fortified German positions held this hill. If true, this would put the US soldiers at risk if they were to try and pass it. The decision was made for the 157th to take this hill. At 2:30 AM on the 13th of September, under the cover of darkness, Fisher led his platoon of men together with the rest of Easy Company. Shortly after the men moved off, the forward elements began to come under heavy machine gun fire. Fisher worked his way towards the machine gun alone and managed to get within 20 feet of the emplacement. He then opened fire with his M1 carbine and silenced the gun crew. A few minutes later, the advance resumed. However, this was short-lived as the US troops began to take machine gun fire to their left flank. Fisher stepped up again. Alone, he crawled to within throwing range and let loose with a hand grenade, destroying the German position. After a short rest, the platoon replenished their ammunition and advanced once more. During the next hour, there was minimal resistance until the troops were halted by intense machine gun and rifle fire. Fisher commanded his troops and led the attack to take out the German position, which was eventually successful. Fisher then observed a German laying down fire on his troops from an emplaced position. Together with one of his men, he moved forward and took out the position. As the advance up the hill continued, the intensity of the fight increased. One of the US troops inadvertently bypassed a foxhole. A German soldier leapt from the hole and began fighting hand-to-hand with the US soldier, attempting to take his rifle. Luckily, Fisher was close behind and stepped in and killed the German with his carbine, saving the life of his fellow man. About 30 minutes after this, the whole platoon was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire across a field. Fisher, wasting no time and disregarding the powerful fire coming at him, alone he ran across the open field, which had no cover or concealment, to within range. He then took out the gun emplacement. On his way back to the platoon, he continued to receive fire from various German positions. When he returned, the platoon was taking machine gun fire from the front. Calling out to his men, he found only 2 grenades left in the whole platoon. Fisher pulled the pins on both grenades, and with one in each hand, crawled towards the machine gun position. As he moved along, he crossed areas with no cover, but managed to make it to within 15 yards. He threw the 2 grenades, which demolished the position and killed the crew. This was the 6th gun position that he was responsible for taking out. By this stage, the sun was beginning to come up, so he ordered his men to dig in and hold the ground already taken. The Germans began a counterattack, with the Americans receiving fire from the front and both flanks. Fisher directed his men and organised the defences. Finally, with his troops low on ammunition, the Germans launched one last-ditch thrust, attacking the US positions from all sides. Men were fighting in hand-to-hand combat in some areas, but the Americans managed to push the Germans back. Fisher had been shot in both feet at close range, but refused medical treatment. He was unable to walk given his wounds, but crawled from man to man, encouraging them and checking their positions. Finally, once the fighting had subsided, Fisher crawled 300 yards back to the aid station for treatment. He would eventually be evacuated. After recovering from his wounds, in May 1945, Fisher would be awarded the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions and leadership under intense enemy fire on that day in September 1944. After the war, Fisher would serve in the New York National Guard and eventually retire as a lieutenant colonel. On the 7th of January 1982, Fisher would pass away at the age of 68. Now buried in the Arlington National Cemetery, Fisher's courageous and frankly amazing actions in southern France are a reminder of what a man is capable of when faced with an impossible situation. What are your thoughts of Armand Fisher and his actions during World War II? Do you know of another Medal of Honor story you want told? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to expand your knowledge and join the growing Premier History community.